We want to check in on the impact this is having on the oil gas markets. Prices for oil and gas are both holding steady, even as the violence continues in Iraq. Oil spiked to over $105 a barrel in June when militants first started their assault. But now the U.S. measure for crude prices is, well, under $100 a barrel, and that's the lowest they've been since last December. Consumers are also paying less to put gasoline in the cars than they did 1 year ago. The average price of gasoline is now at $3.50 a gallon. For more on this, we go to Kent Moores in Pittsburgh. He's the executive chairman of the High-powered Global Energy Symposium. He's also the editor of Energy Advantage. Welcome back, Kent. It's good to see you. Let me start with oil prices. I think there's some confusion for a lot of folks because you would think they would move up in light of all this violence, but they're actually moving down. What's working here?
Well, there are a couple of factors that are at play. One is the time of year. Traditionally, this time of year prices are going down because so is demand. But secondly, traders still don't believe that the problems, the crisis that exists in Iraq has any direct impact on the actual production, or 80% of the production, which is in southern Iraq. And so as a result, they're heavily discounting what impact this crisis is having on prices.
When you think about demand, I've heard some people say that the peak of demand is sometime around Labor Day, at least in the U.S., and we've kind of fallen short in terms of our projections for demand. Does it mean we're going to see continued lower prices going into the next several months, into November and December?
Well, it's very difficult to say at this point. My guess is that what's occurring in Iraq, what's occurring in Ukraine, and to a lesser extent, the impact that the Gaza situation has on the international oil market, this is slowly building. And so as we get into September and October, we're going to have stockpiling issues in several parts of the world. And the uncertainty that's generated by such crises can only be moving prices up. So we may well be seeing a bottoming out here of prices, but I think the prices are going back up, even if it's slowly moving up over the next couple of weeks.
Ken, I think you're insinuating that there could be something that happens, at least a significant risk factor here. What's worrying you the most?
Well, there are several things, Philip, that are worrying me today. One is the inability of the central government in Baghdad to be able to come up with a concerted administrative approach. Most people completely misunderstand the situation here. The Islamic State, or ISIS, or ISIL, depending on how you want to refer to them, does not have to control a single well in southern Iraq to be able to impact the price. All they have to do is immobilize the government in Baghdad. Without central administrative control, the Western majors running those fields in the south really don't know what they're supposed to be doing next. And that's really the political vice that's being created here. So without controlling any fields whatsoever, prices are going to begin to feel the impact merely because of the political instability that's taking place in the capital.
In the Gulf War, both one and the second time in Iraq, there's a lot of concern that the Iraqis there would ultimately blow up a lot of those pipelines. I guess that's part of what you're talking about, is that uncertainty. What would happen to the global oil markets if they chose to do that?
Well, let's take a look at what the structure is right now. About 20% of Iraqi exports come from the north, and that's essentially on the Kirkuk Ceyhan pipeline into southeastern Turkey. Now, we had assumed that that was essentially safe because the Peshmerga of Kurdistan, the autonomous area in northern Iraq, essentially could control it. Well, after the last couple of days in which the Peshmerga has been routed by the IS forces, that's all now problematic. It's actually the security of the capital of Erbil, the Kurdish capital of Erbil, that is playing the American hand at this point. It's requiring that the Americans get more heavily involved. That's number one. Number two, the exports coming out of the south are essentially flowing into the Shat al-Arab and then into the northern Persian Gulf. But there, the major companies running 80% of the exports have to get their instructions from a central government in Baghdad. If you immobilize that government, the companies that are essentially running the fields don't know where to go next. The most disturbing thing that's occurred over the last couple of days is we're beginning to see major oil companies withdrawing non-essential personnel. And at the moment, that's not adversely impacting exports, but that's the first sign that the foreign companies believe that the crisis is going to be spreading.
Ken, I only have another minute. What about Russia? What about Ukraine? You know, depending on the day, things are either getting worse or they're getting better. But how does that impact the oil markets? I mean, and also including the nat gas markets as well.
Well, it's the natural gas market we have to worry about here most. At the moment, this crisis once again hit at the best time of the year, very low demand, very warm temperatures, plenty of natural gas in storage in Ukraine. By the time we get to the third week of September, Ukraine will have to replenish those stockpiles or it's going to be in deep difficulty as winter advances. When that takes place, then Western Europe has to worry because the knock-on effect is if Ukraine and Russian Gazprom have an impasse on the importing of natural gas, there's always the possibility again that that supply of gas could be interrupted to Europe. So we're in a lull period right now, but from the standpoint of crisis, nothing's getting resolved, the situation is getting worse, and from an energy standpoint, this can easily become acute, and it can become acute very quickly.
A very serious situation. Kent Moores, thank you again live for us in Pittsburgh, and of course we hope you're wrong about this, but fingers are crossed.